Hello everyone, this is Orlando from A Collector's Dream. And today I'm going to do a video response for Jayson, Mr. Fisherbike. And Jayson is an awesome guy, awesome YouTuber, and he is really getting into vintage more than ever now. So he wanted us to share our top 10 vintage cards. Now, as a long-time vintage collector, it's almost impossible to pick my top 10 cards. So I've kind of picked the top 15. I'm sure you guys don't mind. So the video may be a little long, but hang around. I think you're gonna enjoy it. I pulled out some of my my favorite cards, and they are not, some of them are expensive cards, of course, but my favorite cards are not necessarily my most expensive cards. So I'll give you that hint right there. And I'm gonna show you and talk a little bit about the cards. And like Dylan and Adam did, they took their time and they showed the cards. And really, I could look at these cards all day. But I can't make a video that's gonna last that long. But again, I'm warning you, this video's probably gonna last 20-30 minutes, I would imagine, because I'm gonna take my time. I'm gonna look at these cards like I just enjoy looking at them. They just really, these are my, I ended up picking 15, my top 15 cards. I just couldn't really narrow it down. I think I got the top 10 right, but these guys probably should be somewhere in there, and I just couldn't exclude them because I just love the Red Heart cards. So I had to include my Mickey Mantle Red Heart. The Red Hearts are just one of my favorite cards. This is a beautiful picture of the Mick, and had to include them. I'm a Mickey Mantle collector. I've got the run, and I just, that's really the first player run I ever did, and my favorite player is Mick, and of course the Yankees are my favorite team. So here's the Mickey Mantle Red Heart, and this one is number 15 on my list. Mickey Mantle Red Heart dog food. You can see the Red Heart dog food in the back there. So most of these cards you're gonna see, I bought them raw and graded them myself, because a lot of these I bought many years ago. So this is the Red Heart Mickey Mantle, and that card is going to be number 15. I'll leave them on the screen, but I'm going to have to move them out of the screen eventually. And number 14 is another one of the my players, of course, Hall of Famers that I really like, and this is one of my favorite cards of Ted Williams, and that's the 50 Bowman Ted Williams. And it's just a beautiful card. I really like the Bowman cards. You could see the stadium in the background. You could see Ted taking that swing. You see in the back the tarp that they were putting there. And I just love these cards. The artwork on these cards from 1950 are really beautiful. And as far as Ted Williams, I would say this is my favorite Ted Williams card. So I had to include this one in there. And that's the 1950 Bowman Ted Williams. And that's the back of the Ted Williams card there. So you can take a look at it there. Ted the Thumper. It's called the Thumper. I didn't even know. I knew that, but that's not the name he usually goes with. But one of the most feared hitters. So that's the my favorite Ted Williams card. Had to include a Teddy ball game in here. So that's number 14. Number 13 on my list is really the first card that got me back into kind of the pre-war. I used to be, of course, a dealer, and I had every card from the 50s and 60s and 70s. I almost had every set from the 60s, except for a couple of them. And I had a bunch of sets from the 50s. So, and after that, it took me back. I went back to get cards, and I really got into the 49 leaf set. This was back when all these are old labeled. Most of these are old labeled probably. So this is my favorite Joe DiMaggio card. And the reason it's my favorite is because this was the first real, what I call, vintage pre-50s card that I got. I bought this raw at a card shop in Brandon, Florida. And I had it graded years ago. So this is the 1949 leaf Joe DiMaggio, card number 1. And it's, as a Yankee fan, you gotta include a Joe DiMaggio in here. And this is really my favorite Joe DiMaggio card, the 1949 leaf. And because of the 49 leaf, I got into the 49 leaf premiums. And unfortunately, I sold most of my 49 leaves, but I kept the Joe D. And I guess I'm going on the Yankees theme. My 13th favorite card has got to be Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig, one of my favorite players of all time. To me, this is his nicest card. And, I got this graded last year. I bought this raw. So not in the greatest condition, but hey, it's a Lou Gehrig. It's a beautiful Lou Gehrig card. And these are the type of cards that I really like, the colorful cards. You're gonna see some yellow background cards. I enjoy those too. But Lou Gehrig, one of the greatest players ever. Probably one of my top 3 players that I've always loved. So gotta include Lou Gehrig in there. So I just couldn't leave this card out. It's just, to me, that's the prettiest Lou Gehrig card that there is. So I included Lou in there. And then my 11th card is, another yellow card. It's Roy Campanella, the 1952 Topps Roy Campanella. And really, I just love this card. I love the picture on that, the portrait that it has on that. This is a beautifully centered card. It's the high number. It's number 314. It comes right after the Jackie card. You have the Mantle, Jackie, Roy Campanella, the high number cards. This is one of the tougher cards in the high number series. And it's just such a beautiful card. And Roy Campanella really, was the best catcher at the time. During these days, before he got in before he was paralyzed in the car accident, he was better than Yogi. I mean, he was really the top catcher at the time. Unfortunately, his career was cut short. But this is just a beautiful card, my favorite card of Roy Campanella. So I had to also include that in the list, and that's the Roy Campanella 1952 Topps card. The reason it's an A is because it's a minimum size card. And this was in the, like Mike says, the attic find, where I picked up another card I'm going to show in the top 10 from the same attic find. And this is the number 11 is Roy Campanella. I'm gonna move these up here a little bit, try to keep them in the screen. So I'm gonna move into my top 10. And like Adam and Dylan say, I could look at these cards all day. I could sit there and just stare at them and stare at them and stare at them. There's just, again, my top 15 cards in my collection. Not my top 15 cards, my favorite cards in my collection. And moving on to number 10 is my favorite Ty Cobb card. And that's the 1911, the T205 Ty Cobb. And that's just my favorite Ty Cobb card. And this one is authentic. It's I've shown this before. It's been trimmed, the top part. You can see they did a little bit of a haircut on that card. But this is a super, super tough card. And what I like about these cards is the T205s versus the T206 is that it has the player's information. This was the first card that was made that actually has the statistics and a write-up of the players. Of course, these cards also come in different cigarette packs. This is the Piedmont version, and there's a few other versions that I've shown before, the Honest Long Cut and other ones. But this particular card is Ty Cobb, and it shows you his batting average in 1910, 380, 377. But it's my favorite Ty Cobb card. Well, okay, it's my favorite Ty Cobb card, but I have another Ty Cobb that I'm gonna be showing. That's my favorite Ty Cobb. Not necessarily a card. So this is the T205 Ty Cobb from 1911, and that's going to be number 10 on my list. Number 9. Number 9 is a card that I got at last year's National, and it's from a rare set. It's from the 1895 Mayo Cut Plug, and this is the Cap Anson. And not in the best shape, but these cards are very, very tough to come by. First of all, because they would put in Mayo Cut Plug tobacco tins. So they literally were mixed in with the tobacco. And you can see on his nose, it's got like a tobacco stain on there. But I love these because it's an actual picture, you know, of the player versus a drawing. And it's very, very difficult to find pictures of the players back in the 1800s, and especially one that's very clear. You know, most of them fade very easily because they're photos. And the back, it's a black back, blank back. But these were stuffed into actual tobacco, loose tobacco, for chewing and smoking. You can see on that there. Mayo Cut Plug for chewing and smoking. So this is what you call dip. You take a dip, put the tobacco on in your mouth and chew it away. But this is the Cap Anson from one of the toughest sets to come by, the 1895 Mayo Cut Plug. And these are actually they're bigger than the the tobacco cards, as you can see. So that's why it's even tougher to get them in good condition, because they are bigger. They're not as small as you may think. You know, initially when I first got into these, I thought, you know, by looking at pictures, you think, oh, these are like the tobacco cards. But no, it's actually bigger than the tobacco cards, and you can see the sizes there. So that's my number 8. Number 7 is comes from from my favorite sets of all, and that's the 1888 Goodwin Champions. And one of my favorite sets, is my favorite set, but one of my favorite cards from that set is the first football card ever made, and that's the Beecher, Harry Beecher. And this one, I have a couple of these. I'm going to take this to the National because I do have another one, not as nice looking as this one is as far as the front, but this one has back damage. It was in an album, but the reason it's in this kind of condition is because it was in an album for over 100 years. So this is the first football card ever. I put it as number 8 on my list because it's just a beautiful card. You know, if you look at the football that they used to use in those days, and here it shows that Beecher was the captain of the Yale football team. And Beecher, let me get you a good look at that here, I can. Captain of the Yale football team. And Beecher, you know, was the GOAT back in the day. You know, Yale went undefeated. It was basically, back then they played football in college. You had Yale, Princeton, Harvard. Those were the teams that were the top teams back in the day. And Yale was the number 1 team with the number 1 player Harry Beecher, who I'm showing here, and the coach was Walter Camp. Walter Camp was the one who actually wrote the book on football and made up the rules for the most part. Similar to the Wright brothers, not the Wright brothers flying, but Harry Wright and his brother, and Abner Doubleday, who wrote the rules on baseball. Walter Camp, who managed to coach the Yale team, was the one of the originators of football. And Harry Beecher was an incredible player, and he was the first one, really, because in those days, mostly it was a running game. And Beecher was the first real passing quarterback, and that's why he was so good, and they went undefeated. In the year that this card was made, in 1888, Harry Beecher threw 36 touchdowns with that ball, like a soccer ball. He threw 36 touchdowns back in that era, where there were barely any touchdowns ever being thrown. So an incredible player. Read up on him. I've done videos about him. But Harry Beecher, the first football card ever made, the captain of the Yale football team from the 1888 Goodwin champions. That's number 7 on my list. Number 6. Number 6 here, yeah. No, wait. 10, 9, 8. No, that's number 8. Number 7. It's hard for me to keep track of it. I'm getting old, guys. But number 7 is really, to me, a special card. It's not really a card. It's a postcard. But this is the kind of cards that I really, really love to have. Not just because it's Ty Cobb's first kind of rookie card from 1907. This is the first card that that Ty Cobb appeared with the team. And in the back there is, I've done a video on this one. Back is Sam Crawford back there. There's Ty Cobb, and just a whole bunch of Hall of Famers in this postcard. And during these years, 1907 to 1910, the Detroit was the best team, and they went to the championship. Unfortunately, Honus Wagner beat Cobb back then in the World Series. But it's just such an incredible card that I just love the history of it. You could see there, you could see Cobb, and I don't know if you can get a good look at Cobb, and you can see his spikes there. You can see his spikes. You can see the bats that they use. There's the mascot, the dog, the mascot. That's Huey Jennings over there. And you can see over here just the gloves, the equipment they used. And the best thing about this card, this particular card, and the main reason that I got this card is obviously not the condition, but that this card really is a piece of history. This card was mailed, and it was mailed from Detroit to New York, and it ended up being in a collection of Claire Squires, who received this card in Buffalo, New York, back in 1908. So there's the stamp, the postal stamp. So even though this says it's from 1907 to 1909, this is the 1907 version, the first version of it. And the reason you can tell is because it was mailed early in 1908. And here is the actual stamp from Benjamin Franklin's stamp. And if anybody's a stamp collector knows that this is a very rare stamp and valuable stamp, which I didn't really know until one of my subscribers told me that. But the key to this card, guys, is the message that is said on here. You got to remember that this is big time for Detroit, where they had just gotten Ty Cobb, and they had an incredible team back then, and the city was just going crazy. And why did I buy this particular card? It's the message. And here's the message. This was sent by a lady called Idolin to Miss Clara Squires. And there's the address there, 272 Georgia Street, Buffalo, New York. But let me go over this because this is really the key. It says, received your letter Tuesday, a.m. Did Howard get back all right? Remember, in those days, there was no text messaging. The only way you can get a quick message to someone was to send them a postcard. So Idolin sent Claire Squires this postcard. And in this postcard, she's asking, did Howard get back all right? Drop me a card and let me know. And this is the best part of it. She tells Claire, Detroit is baseball mad. See that? She says to him, she says, Detroit is baseball mad. Idolin. So what that means is they weren't mad. They were going crazy over having Ty Cobb and going to the World Series. So, it's just, from Detroit to New York, and Idolin is telling Claire that Detroit is baseball mad. And this is why they were baseball mad. To me, this is just a piece of history. And this is why I'm putting this as one of my top cards in my collection, one of my favorite cards in my collection. Ty Cobb rookie team postcard. So we got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Number 6 is my favorite player from the 19th century, from the 1800s. And this is the latest pickup that I've had, really my only big pickup this year. And this card is the reason why I'm not spending any money at the National, because this is a Grail card for me. It's the 1887 N172 Old Judge King Kelly. Not only is it the King Kelly card, but it's the Bearhead Chicago on shirt, which really is the portrait card of King Kelly, which is one of the rarest versions of the King Kelly card. And I got this because the photo on this was just so good and so clear. And there are only 4 of these cards known to exist that have been graded with the Chicago uniform for King Kelly. In Chicago, he played with Cap Anson. As you can see here, he played with Cap Anson. And I've shared this, and history behind these cards is that, King Kelly was the Babe Ruth of his day. And, he was a party guy. Fortunately, he died in his mid-30s because he got pneumonia. And, he was a party guy, but he was the highest paid player back in the day. You could see $10,000 Kelly, they called him. And if you're familiar with one of the most famous poems in history, Casey at the Bat, that was written about King Kelly. King Kelly was Casey. And like I said, he was Babe Ruth before Babe Ruth. He did some plays, vaudeville acts and things like that. And he was very, very well known. And he was the biggest attraction back in those days. And I was looking for this card probably for, over 20 years, trying to find a good card of King Kelly from the 1887. And when this one came up with just such a beautiful photograph and the portrait version of it, which is so, so tough and rare to find, that I spent my money on it and won't be doing much at the National. But this has turned out to be now my 6th favorite card in my collection. And the reason it's a 1, not because of the front, because the front is beautiful, it's because of the back. Oh, there goes an alarm, sorry about that. It's because this was stuck on an album. But I love those stuck in album cards because, you know, because it was stuck in an album, that's why this photo, which is an actual photo, is still so bright and visible, because it was probably stuck in that album for over 100 years. It's from 1887. So King Kelly, really my favorite player from the 1800s. And this is a Grail card for me. Only 4 have been graded by PSA total on this one. So let's see here. I'm gonna have to move some of these guys up. I'm just gonna have to cover some of these up. Sorry about that, Mick. You're getting covered up, but gotta move on. And so where are we at here? Lose track. I told you it's gonna be a long video, so sorry, just bear with me. We're getting to the top 5 cards. My top 5 favorite cards in my collection are coming up right now. And this is number 5, Babe Ruth. As a Yankee fan, you gotta have Babe Ruth card. You gotta have a Babe Ruth Playing Days card. And this is the 1922 American Caramel E120 Babe Ruth. This is my favorite Babe Ruth card in my collection. And I just love how the ornate background that they did here. The Babe holding the ball there with the old style pinstripe cap, pinstripe uniform. You know, Ruth, outfield of the New York Americans. And it's just so cool with the design on that, with the baseball, and you can see it's very, you know, you got to see it in person. Looks a lot better in person, but you could see the background, how, you know, ornate they did that with all of this. Those days, this is really tough to recreate back in the days, that kind of border like that. And I just think this is just a beautiful card of the Babe with an actual picture of the Babe, not like those strip cards that kind of have just like a goofy looking Babe Ruth. So I just love this Babe Ruth. I'll show you the backs. I'm not showing too many backs now. Yeah, I am. So here is the back of it. And this is a really, really big set of 240 cards. So it's tough to pull a Babe Ruth on this. There's probably, I think there's less than 50 of these Babe Ruth cards graded. And it shows the whole lineup there. This was when Wally Pipp was still first base. So, number 5 of my favorite cards in my collection is the Babe Ruth. We'll put these on this. Now that I'm getting to the top 5, I think I can squeeze these in here. So now we're moving on to my 4th favorite card in my collection. Some people may say, oh, that should be your favorite. It should be, but it is not my favorite, but it is my most expensive card, and that's the 1952 Mickey Mantle. It is my most expensive card. It's probably, anybody would say that's their number 1 Grail card, and it is my Grail card. It is a card that I sold much of my collection just to obtain, and I'm glad I got it. I finished my Mantle run with this. I was looking for a Mantle card, God, forever. And when I saw this one and I knew the history and the provenance of this one, I had to get it. This also came from a find, also with this, with my Roy Campanella. They were both pulled out of packs, and I know the person, or I don't know the person who pulled it from the pack, but I know of the person, the story, and I showed the story before, but this was an attic find of a small lot of 52 high numbers that was found in a box in an attic with other children's toys. And there were a total of about 80-something cards that were found. They're all high number, and this was the Mantle that was in that lot, along with some other ones, of course. There was the Jackie and the Eddie Matthews and stuff, but you know, unfortunately, those got grades higher than 6s, This one was a minimum size. So I was lucky enough to be able to buy this because of that. When this was graded authentic altered, people were scared of it. But I knew the background. I talked to the person who found it. I talked to, you could look at my Mantle video and see the story on it. I'm not going to go into it right now. But it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous card. To me, it's the best Mantle out there. You know, I mean, of course, you can't compare it to the 10s that are out there and stuff, but you know, you try to find another Mantle that virtually untouched like this one, it's almost impossible. And I spoke to a person who actually found it, went out to the house to get it. He looked at it and he said, he personally told me that this was the finest Mantle that he had ever seen. They were hoping that it would grade 7, 8, or 9, but it came back as a minimum size card. And let me see, I'll show you here somewhere. Here it is right here. Minimum size. And I could have, SGC, could get it reholdered in the SGC with the minimum label, but it's part of my Mantle registry and PSA, so I'm going to keep it that way, and I don't want anybody touching this card actually and getting it out of here. The only thing I don't like is they put like a little bag in here or something. They say it's like in a baggie, but it's a gorgeous card, just like it came out of the pack. I'll give you a good look at it. And I did a whole video on this, a long video with the whole story. So if you want to go back and look at that, you can. But like I said, most people would say that should be the #1 card in your collection. But I have to put it #4 because I have other cards that I think are just prettier, better looking than this one. Or cards that I really, you know, are so tough and so rare that I just felt that they needed to be kind of ahead of the Mantle, really. And here's one of them here. This is #3, my 3rd favorite card in my collection. And that is the 1894 Mayo Cup Plug Anonymous. It's John Dunlop. This is the rarest football card ever. Some people say this is the Honus Wagner of football cards. Why? Because it was short printed. Because usually the cards from the 1895 Mayo have the name and the team here, and this one was not. And the story is it was pulled from production. So as far as I know, there are about 9 of these cards that exist. And this one is authentic, altered, because someone somewhere put a marker to the top of it. See the marker? But it didn't even touch the picture. And it does have a crease on there. And Mike Junkracks Hero did actually a video about these cards and actually showed this particular card. And he said there that, he's, look at this one. It even has a crease and it's got a marker on top. And I'm like, hey, that's my card. And yeah, it does have a big crease on it. It does have a marker on that. But look at the picture of John Dunlop. If you look at the other cards that exist of the anonymous card with John Dunlop, the picture is not as good, not as clear. The highest graded on these is a 3. And this is probably the nicest copy as far as the picture, because these pictures, again, they tend to fade. And this is part of the Mayo Cup Plug cards, which is like this one. So they're bigger cards. You can see they're bigger than the regular. I showed you the size before. They're bigger, and they were put inside the tins of chewing tobacco of Mayo Cup Plug. And this was the first Mayo Cup Plug that was done by Mayos, which was the football, 1894. And then in 1895, they did the baseball set. Very similar, basically the same, black backs. So yeah, it has a crease. Yeah, it has some marker, but to me, it's just a beautiful card and the rarest football card in existence. John Dunlop. It wasn't until the 80s that they discovered who this player actually was. And they realized that John Dunlop was one of the stars. He was probably one of the better players, him and Poe, and I forget the name of the other guy. There was 3 main guys in that set. And who's the other guy? Pudge. I can't remember his last name, but anyway, Poe, Pudge, and John Dunlop. And they didn't know who this guy actually was. The card was so rare, there were so few of them. And they finally found out, going back and doing research, in the late 80s, they discovered that the person in this anonymous card was John Dunlop of Harvard. So that is my 3rd favorite card in my collection, John Dunlop anonymous card. So you might saying, Orlando, what's going to be the second best favorite, my second favorite card in my collection? My favorite player is Mickey Mantle. And if that's not my favorite card of Mickey Mantle, this is my favorite card of Mickey Mantle. I love this card. I bought this card raw many, many, many years ago. I got it graded back in the day. It graded a 6. This is the first big Mickey Mantle card I ever bought. I remember when I got it. I remember the dealer that I got it from. I remember I got 2 Mantles from that dealer, both raw, and I had them graded. And this one graded a 6, and the other one I got from him graded a 7 with a stain on the back because it had a wax stain. And that was my 53 Bowman. So, but this was my first big Mantle purchase. So it really means a lot to me because as a Mantle fan, this was my big card back in the 80s when I first started as doing cards as a dealer. And I got this from another dealer. I got it from a collection. So I know it's only been in a few hands. The owner that had it originally sold it to that dealer sold it to me, and I got it graded. So just my favorite Mantle. It means a lot to me. It was my first big purchase and my first Mantle card, old Mantle card from the 50s that I ever had. So I just want to give you a good look at that Mantle card. It's just a beauty. Graded a 6. Probably could get regraded. This was in the days where PSA did not give any half grades. And I really thought, other than the centering top to bottom, because it is a little bit off center top to bottom, but I love it that it has a bigger bottom because it has a bigger red part there. I love that red. So you can see it is off center top to bottom, but side to side is beautiful. So my first big Mantle card, my second favorite card in my collection. And Jayson, I know I'm going back a little far, and I know you wanted to do vintage, and I'm going way into the vintage era, even further vintage than ever. But you know what? One day you may want to hit and check out some pre-war stuff. And if you do, this is my #1 favorite card in my entire collection. And my favorite player from the 1800s, as I told you before, was King Kelly. And this is my favorite card in my collection, which is the 1888 Goodwin Champions King Kelly card. I just love the card. I love the colors on that card, the sky, the angry sky, I call it, with the colors on that. And the way that this card was made back in the day is it's just incredible. History, beautiful card. It takes me back to the old days of the 1800s when these players used to play, and just the mustaches, the uniforms. You can see the uniform with the Boston, and you know, it didn't have buttons back then. They just kind of did. They tied up the uniform. They wore it all the way up, tied up with a tie and everything. But back in those days, remember, people went to the ball games dressed up really, really fancy. It was a big, big deal back then. And there's the back of the card here. Just give you a quick look in the back. The backs are all pretty much the same as the other Goodwin Champion cards. I'm sweating on the card here. It's just, I love it. But this one is my favorite card in my collection. I've said that before, and I'll keep saying it again. May not be the most expensive card that I have, but to me, it's the best looking card and my favorite card that I own. You know, along with my latest King Kelly pickup. And you can see that was earlier in the Chicago uniform. He later went on to play with Boston. And you can see also with the tie, how it had the ties and stuff and all that. So Jayson, I hope you enjoyed my video of the favorite cards in my collection. I couldn't stay with 10. I had to go with 15. So that's it. Gosh, over 40 minutes. I told you it was going to be a long video, but I hope it's worth your while. You know, and showed you my my favorite cards in my collection, all the way back to pre-war. Thanks, guys. Really, really appreciate you watching my videos. I'm going to be doing a live stream on Sunday at 7 o'clock with Mike Junkwax Hero. I'm sure I'm going to be showing this card because he highlighted that in one of his videos, so I want to make sure I pull that out. But I really wanted to show you my favorite card ever, and that's my King Kelly card. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Leave me some comments. What do you think is your favorite card out of the 15 that I've shown? What do you think is the prettiest card? I'm not talking the most expensive. We know the Mantle's the most expensive, but which is the nicest card you think that I own out of these 15? Leave me a comment. I surely will appreciate it, and I'll write back to you. Thank you, everyone. Have an awesome, awesome day. This is Orlando from My Collector's Dream. Thanks a lot for watching, guys.